Welcome ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to remake this video which basically created my YouTube channel over 6 months ago. It is still my most successful YouTube video to date, so let's try to beat that if we can, of course. Now this is a tank destroyer which has a very close place to my heart. It's actually my favorite armored fighting vehicle which served during World War II. It is of course the Jagdpanther tank destroyer from Germany. Of course, if you want to find out what my top 5 tanks and tank destroyers of all time is, of course, you can do so by going here to the top right of the screen, somewhere, I think, here. Yes, here, exactly here. And you can find out what my top 5 is. So yeah, if you are interested in that, go for it. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe and leave a comment, and we'll be going now. The Jagdpanther was very late to the party, so to speak, and its first combat action was actually in Normandy in 1944. However, the idea for a fast tank destroyer with a capable main armament, the 88mm L71, was already there back in 1942. The main armament they chose was the 88mm L71, which was already used on tank destroyers like the Nashorn and tanks like the King Tiger, so it was already more than proven on the battlefield. It was derived from a anti-aircraft gun, which was also serving as a anti-tank gun, which already more improved its capability on the front lines. And the chassis they used was the chassis of the Panther, which basically they just extended the chassis and MNH made a prototype for the Jagdpanther and they showed it to the leader of Germany, which gave his approval for production back in 1943 October. But only in 1944 January they went into full-on production. A fun fact is that the Tiger II also went into full-on production back in 1944, and both of them debuted in the same battle, which was of course the battle for Normandy, and both had production numbers of around 400. Of course, when you only have a superstructure, this would mean that the range of fire is quite limited. Even though they had a good elevation and depression, they could only go 13 degrees to the left and to the right. So if you wanted to take a shot at anything outside of the 13 degrees to the left and to the right, you had to move the entire vehicle, which in and of itself is quite a disadvantage, considering when you are concealed you don't want to move because then you're easier to be spotted. And an issue is that would amplify this problem is that it was quite easy to destroy the tracks of a Jagdpanther, and this is because the tracks were quite thin. So once it was destroyed, it would be essentially helpless against any flanking maneuver. However, once caught in the field of fire, you'd be in very deep trouble. The 88mm L71 was a main armament like no other of the war. It was one of the strongest German main armaments used during the Second World War, probably only being surpassed by the 128mm which was used on the Sturer Emil and the Jagd Tiger. They actually also thought of putting the 128mm on the Jagd Tiger, however this never eventually ever happened because it was unfeasible to do so. Anyway, back to the 88mm. It was recommended that the 88mm had an engagement range of 2.5 kilometers due to how effective this main armament was. On the distance of 500 meters, it had a penetration level of 182 millimeters. So, to put this into perspective, a normal Sherman, so the M4A1 or the normal M4, could be basically penetrated twice over. Just frontally, just twice over. And even when you have the heaviest armored M4 Sherman tank, which is, I think, the Jumbo, it would be in very deep trouble, even frontally, if hit directly by this main armament on a distance of 500 meters. Not only did the Jagdpanther have a very decent or very good main armament, it also had quite a lot of protection, and this is because it's basically the Panther's glazes. And this would mean that it is frontally 160 millimeters thick effectively, which would make it only that the 152mm and the 122mm from the Soviets has a reliable chance of penetrating the Jagdpanther. And the lower glaze was effectively 87mm thick, which is of course less well armored, but it's also a lot smaller and more difficult to hit. To drive all this steel forward, you need to have a good engine, and the engine they chose for this was the Maybach HL230, which is also outfitted on tanks like the Panther and the Tiger. It had about 700 brake horsepower, it had a top speed of 46 km/h, and had an operational range of 160 kilometers. Even though the Germans always praised themselves for having the tank destroyers with low status, like for example the Hetzer and the Jagdpanther 470V, the Jagdpanther very much had quite a tall stature, at least compared to the tank destroyers, making it more difficult to conceal and easier to hit and so on. To be more precise, the Jagdpanther was 9.9 meters long, 2.7 meters tall and 3.4 meters wide, and this allowed the tank destroyer to house up to 5 crew members, and these crew members were the commander, the gunner, the loader, the driver and the radio operator, which is 5 crew members. It is more normal to have 4 crew members, of course these are the driver, the gunner, the loader and the commander, but it is not uncommon to see 5 crew members. Like most vehicles from the World War II time, the Jagdpanther wasn't immune to reliability issues. Reliability issues include, but are not limited to, the Maybach HL230 engine overheating, especially during long periods of usage or driving in hot weather. The transmission was prone to slipping, so that will mean that it had a power loss or being stuck in a single gear. It also faced suspension issues, and lastly it also faced logistical issues, and these logistical issues were mainly that it was expensive to make and of course to maintain and repair. There were several notorious ace tanks in the Jagdpanther as well. One of the most well-known aces in the Jagdpanther was the legendary German tanker Kurt Knuspel, which also served in the Jagdpanther. However, the time from Kurt Knuspel was poorly documented compared to the time commanding a Tiger II. Several other aces include Albert Ernst, which was credited with 20 confirmed tank kills, and Ernst Barkman, which had 30 confirmed vehicles destroyed. All in all, the Jagdpanther was a very legendary vehicle, well loved by a lot of armored fighting vehicle enjoyers. Due to how expensive the Jagdpanther was, it was produced a low amount of times, so it had a very limited amount of effect on the outcome of the war. A vehicle which could be compared to the Jagdpanther from another nation would be the Su-85, which was produced 2.6 thousand times. And even though it had less armor and a weaker main armament, overall the Su-85 would have had more effect on the outcome of the war than the Jagdpanther eventually did. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that was it for today's video. I would like to thank VW German Looker and Sander for being members of my channel. 70 likes would mean that a new video will be there in 3 days, so let's try to achieve this goal within 24 hours. Other than that, I got a video and a playlist if you're interested in that, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good day.